Welcome back. In our previous video we learnt the basics of how to create a box. So the box itself, while very useful, isn't very exciting. So in this video we're going to learn how to add the nicer features like a smooth edge using chamfers, fillets, and then how to do an offset plane and add some holes that simulate real threaded screws with countersunk heads. So let's jump straight into it. So next I want to remove these sharp edges. There's two tools that I can use for that. One is the Fillet Tool that gives us a rounded edge, and the other is the Chamfer Tool that gives us an angled edge, which by default will be 45 degrees. For some of our initial edges, so I'll select that, and I'm just going to do the 4 corners here. So I'm rotating and just selecting those edges one at a time. So it tells me up here I've got 4 edges, and I want that to have a 2mm edge rolling on it. So you can see from the top view and the preview, that makes it look a nice clean edge there. So I'll click OK on that. And now I want to do the same. So again, using my Fillet Tool on the bottom, but I want a different angle. So I can select that as one complete closed surface, and I'll state that that will just be a 1mm. And OK. In a moment it'll update, so you can see it's a little bit slow there. So I've now got 2mm on these edges and 1mm on this edge. So I've got some nice clean surfaces to work with. Choose chamfer. So I'll choose that outer, and I want to chamfer by 1mm. And again, in the preview you can see that's got a nice 90-degree edge, including over the bends. So because this is going to have a sealed lid on it, I think I'll actually do that a bit smaller, so I'll go for 0.5 of a mil. And OK. So now I have all of my edges nice and smooth, so there's nothing sharp I can catch myself on, and the inside, it doesn't matter at this stage. So far all of our sketches have been working from the back of the unit. We're going to do a different plane now, and then we'll take it to a totally different level once we've got the hang of that. So I'm going to do another sketch, but this time I'm going to do it on this plane here. So I'll click on that. So it's automatically orientated me, so I'm looking straight onto that. And I want to put a hole through there. So let's draw a circle, and I'll just draw it offset from the center for the moment. And I want to make this a, let's say, a 10mm circle. Now to get that to align to the center, there's a few things I can do. I can click and drag, and you'll see when I get to the middle, depending on where I go, I can get it to snap to different points, like that triangle there. The triangle means it's at the center of a line. If I was to do it on this edge, you'll see another triangle somewhere along here. There. And as I go in this case, it gives me a dotted line. You would have had that when I went down as well, but the green line was covering it. So I can bring that over and snap it to the green line, and I now know that I'm in the center of that line and the center of that because of those triangle snaps that happened. So I will finish that, and I'm going to make that a cut through. So I'll pull it down, and I could actually say, instead of just being on that one surface, I want it to come all the way through the other end. So you can see like that, it's making a hole right the way through. So to make it clean, I'll just put it to an object, and I'll click on this as the object, and there it is. You might notice that we've got this handle here. So I can actually make that cone-like. I haven't ever found that I've needed to use that, but it is there if you need to make it flange out for some reason. So we now have a hole right the way through the box based on a different plane. So where I've got these surfaces here, I could actually create a plane halfway up the box to say I want to draw from this point. Now in the case of these, that would actually be silly because we could just draw from the top one downward, but for argument's sakes we're going to make a plane that's offset from the base to draw these. So I'll come back to our drawing and I'm going to do a offset plane. So that literally offsets from another surface. So I'm going to choose the inner base as my surface, and I can pull it up or just type in a value, and you can see it's drawing this area that we can then do additional drawings on. So it's called a construction plane. We construct things from that. So I've come up by 9 mil. I know my box was 15 mil to work with, so I'll go OK on that. And I now have this transparent area to draw on, and if I look over here, we've now got a new section called construction, and we've got this plane which I can turn on and off. So what that means now, instead of having to work with the bottom surface or the top surface, I can work with a surface somewhere in between. So I'm going to do a sketch onto that there plane, and we'll draw some lugs that we can mount some holes on. So to do these, I'm going to start off with a rectangle using just the standard 2-point rectangle, and I'll put 1 point in the corner there, and I'll come out and we will make them 6 mil on each side, and enter. I don't want this to be a sharp inner corner, so I'm going to use the fillet, which is similar to the fillet that we used before, but we're doing this at the drawing level. So I've chosen my two sides. I could have just chosen the point as well. It's a 2 mil fillet, and I'll hit enter on that. And I'm going to show another feature. We could have, using rectangular pattern, done the 4 corners, but we're going to do it this time with the mirror tool. So the mirror tool allows us to mirror across a center line. So I'll select my objects, which will be these points. So I've got to select, in this case, all 5 points. And then I select my mirror line. Now you might have drawn in a line, but I'm again just going to use my X or Y axis. So I'll do the X first, and it's appeared down here. So I'll go OK. And I'm going to repeat that process again, choosing, this time I'll do a drag to select. So I'll select all of those, and I want to mirror across my Y. So if I just move this across, you'll see it's going to draw it there. Now this has created a whole lot of constraints. Kind of ugly and messy for what we're doing. I just did that as an example of how we could do it. In reality, I would actually use rectangular pattern to do that one there. But like we've seen before, if I now say, oh, I want to make this one a little bit smaller, I want that to be 3 mil, it will do it to all of them automatically. So we'll finish that one. And you can see that it's now halfway down the box. It's not at the top or the bottom, it's at that construction plane, which has now become visible because we've used it. And I'm going to extrude these, and I will select all 4 of them. And I'm not going to go quite to the top, we'll go just a little bit below. So we've got 5 millimeters there, leaving just a bit of a gap. So next step will be to put some holes in these. So I now want some holes in these 4 points as mounting holes. So I'm going to do a new sketch on that surface. And I'm just going to throw a couple of construction lines in to start off with, and I'll hover this point here, which will give me that little center point diamond. Zoom myself out, come over to this one and click there. Hit escape so I can start a new line. So the constraints that we've got here are the center point, the triangles. We've got the 90° or the perpendicular constraints. But what I'd like to do is make these distances the same. So I'm going to put a distance from here to here, and it's going to tell me an error, over constrained. I'm just going to say, yep, that's fine, create driven. And that's telling me that this distance here was already defined because of that center point that we'd chosen. But what that's allowed me to do now is if I do a measurement from here to here and click, instead of typing in a value, I can just click on that one and it will say, all right, I'm going to equal D33, which is the reference of this. If I hit enter, it now tells me it's got a formula and it's exactly the same as that one. So we can do the same for between this point and this one, accept the warning. And then down here between, we don't need to do that because it's already done by the top. So come over to this side and I'll select that one and that one, put the measurement in, and rather than typing a value, I'll click on here and hit enter. So that's now made them all the same distance. So that's called using a reference as a measurement. So if I double click on this again, it will tell me that it was D33. It's not easy to see which one D33 was, railways, but in a simple sketch you'll remember that. So next I'm going to put a point on the page. So I'm going to click into the centers of each of these, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I've got these dots that have appeared and I'll finish my sketch. Now the reason I put points there instead of just drawing a hole and pushing it through like we did before is I want to use this hole tool. So with that tool I can select my points. Just bear with me for the ridiculously large size that's coming up. So I've got my 4 points and it's given me some choices here of different types of holes. So I might want a hole that has a countersunk top, which is what we're seeing here, or I might want one that has a counter bore, which means it's got a little bit of a hollow that your screw head can completely sit within. Now I'm not actually going to use this for a real purpose, but again it's just demonstration. I want my hole to have a width for this bore of 4 mil. I want it to have a depth of, we'll leave it as 1 mil, and the overall hole length go down by say 5 mil. So 5 mil isn't quite through the bottom of this particular hole, but we can see we've also got this point on the bottom, which is actually poking out through the bottom of the base there. I might want it without the point and that would bring it back in. So the lower part of that box is now finished. We've created the lid mounting holes, the back mounting holes, a feed through the whole side, some chamfers and some fillets. What I'm going to do is save that. But before I do, I just want to point out that we've got all these named things here. And if I later on want to change something, it can be quite confusing. So as I was going along, if I was doing a complex drawing, I'd start to name these. So I would have said bottom, sketch 2 was the sides, sketch 3 I think was the holes in the back. I'll just make it visible so I can see, yep, holes in the back, rear holes. Sketch 4, what was sketch 4? Probably the end drawing. Yes, the end drawing there. So that was large hole. So I won't keep going, but you can get the idea. You can name these different sketches. Likewise, I could name that plane that was halfway up, so we'll call that mounting lugs. So I'm going to save that now. So if I come up here and go save, give it a name, we'll call it box, and the location will be demo box 1. So into that one. Don't think I need to tunnel down yet. Double click on it, save, and you'll see it will come up that it's now called box and it's version 0. You notice with the others I've got a version 1, a version 8. Every time you do a save, it will actually save the version. If you just close this without saving, it will actually create a copy or save it effectively, but it doesn't increment the version. If I was to save this a second time, so let's make a minor change to it of dimensionally, see how well I've done this. If I change this back to 60, hopefully everything else follows. Now I've hit a problem here that these weren't constrained to the inner edges. So I should have actually, when I was doing that drawing, projected these lines and constrained to it. But if I did a save now, you'll see it prompts me for a version description, and you could say it's 60mm box or something like that. In the next video, we're going to look at how to create the lid, which will focus on projecting parts. So it'll be a new component and we'll project parts from the base component, and we'll also revisit doing the chamfers and fillets and all those sorts of things just as a recap. So hopefully if you haven't already subscribed, you can now, and we'll see you in the next video.